שלום, אנחנו ב-Seedcamp.
The original notion for me was that I'd been an entrepreneur and investor both in the US and then in Europe, and I felt it was very, very hard, as Rashma said, for first-time entrepreneurs to get their businesses off the ground and to be ambitious and to think big and to open the doors that they needed to very quickly to the right advice and the right investors. So what we tried to do as Seedcamp was to bring the ecosystem together in Europe to acknowledge the fact that there was a lot of talent out there. For the first time, there were great examples that people could look to and say, Skype have created a huge business, Last.fm have created a huge business, Last Minute, MySQL, etc. So there were now a lot of examples that people could look at and say, we can afford to think big. And what we try to do is to give people an environment in which they could not just have access to seed capital, but probably more importantly, access to the mentors and the feedback and the advice and the connections that could help them open the doors that you need to open. And often that's the hardest thing as a first-time entrepreneur is, actually knowing who to talk to and, having those people validate you and get you access to the investors or the corporates that you're going to need to scale your business.
We're unique in that we're completely pan-European, so we use London as a base, and that's where there is such a significant amount of activity happening through London. So we have our main event every year, which is a week long, and that happens in London, and out of which we originally had the idea of we would sort of guarantee almost that a certain number of investments would be made out of that. So it also was a great draw for teams to say, if I come all the way, and especially for, again, Europe-wide teams to say, if I come all the way to London, I'm getting, there's a chance that I might be able to really get some funding as well.
And it's really designed to leverage the fact now that, in a world of open source technologies and cloud computing, where you have Amazon Web Services and Google App Engine, if you're a software developer, you can really, really start a business at very little to no cost. It's really your time that is the major expense, and your food and your rent. So we really try and focus on helping those types of entrepreneurs who have raw talent and who can leverage the environment out there, but maybe don't have the overall sort of commercial or sort of just startup skills that there's no reason why as a first-time entrepreneur you would have.
Do you see specific trends going on?
Yeah, I guess, probably, in Berlin, I was sort of surprised when we did it in 2008 how many music companies there were. So, and I noticed that even at the DLD conference that just happened in Munich too, there was a lot of focus on music. So a lot of music startups there.
Only one today.
Only one today, exactly, in Israel. So, and then in Slovenia and well, mostly in Slovenia too, some of the kind of Eastern European countries, we're seeing a lot of semantic web, and Ukraine too, a lot of sort of semantic technologies and search, and so see a lot of companies focusing on that coming out of those regions. Also, often they're working on a lot of local companies solving similar problems in for their region.
The biggest differences that I see region to region is less on the technologies or the sectors that people focus on. It's more the attitude of the entrepreneurs. And actually, to me, that's one of the interesting things about being in Israel with Seedcamp and trying to bring Israel more into Seedcamp, because Israeli entrepreneurs are certainly amongst the best in the 5-hour time zone from London to wherever to India.
I was wondering if I'm a person with a very good idea, isn't it more time-consuming for me to go directly to the US, where I know there's one big market speaking English that I'm directing my stuff to, whereas Europe is a few countries, different kind of culture, people don't like each other in some of the countries, and it's a whole new game, and I have to learn each one.
People in Arkansas don't really like people in California either.
That's true as well.
You know, people forget, actually, they think of the US as a homogeneous market. The US is completely heterogeneous. You know, whether you're a consumer company in the US or an enterprise company in the US, you need 5 sales offices to cover the US. Yes, they speak the same language, but it's not one country. And I think actually, if you look at the most interesting startups that have, or many of the interesting startups that have been developed in the last 5 to 10 years, and I use sort of Skype as a classic example of this, the US was only like 15 to 20% of our customer base. And you know, actually, Israel and Europe are in a very unique position in that you can address not just Europe and the US, but you can address the Asian markets as well. So I think, you know, we're not saying don't go to the US. We are saying that, you know, we now live in a world where the internet is global. It's not just English speaking. In fact, it's less than 30% English speaking. And the fastest growing markets are actually outside of the US. And if you want to see the most advanced advertising markets, online advertising markets, number 1 is Holland and number 2 is the UK, because as a percentage of total ad spend, you know, Holland's 3x the US on a per capita basis, and the UK is 2x. So you can learn a hell of a lot in these markets that you can then translate into the US.